relationship with the right referral partner could be a game changer for any B2B company. So what if you could reverse engineer these relationships at a moment's notice? Start a podcast, invite potential referral partners to be guests on your show, and grow your referral network faster than ever. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. We're here today with Josh Fuhr, managing partner at Finix. Josh, how are you doing today, man?
I'm pretty good. How are you, Logan?
I'm doing really well. And Josh, thanks for joining us, especially because we needed to reschedule the last time we were going to have you on the show. So we really appreciate you taking some time out of your schedule to come onto the show. And we're going to share with our audience a strategy that you guys have used to develop more leads for your business over the last year and a half. But before we get into that topic today, Josh, I would love for you to take a second and share with our audience what you and the team at Finix are up to these days.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, I'm a managing partner at Finix. I'm one of the founding members of the organization. My focus is primarily on the sales side of the organization and working with our sales and marketing team. Finix is a auditing and supply chain consulting company, and we work primarily with healthcare organizations. So the auditing side of our business looks for overpayments that hospitals have made to their vendors. And the business model on that side is to take a contingency percentage of the savings that we can recover for the hospitals. On the supply chain consulting side of our business, we're doing large-scale supply chain transformation projects for some of the biggest healthcare systems in the U.S. So it's things like implementing a new ERP system, setting up a new inventory model, or transitioning to a new group purchasing organization.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So you guys have landed on the Inc. 5000 list here last year. So obviously, enjoying some nice growth over recent history, Josh. And one of the things that we talked about as we were inviting you to be on the show was the way that you guys have used reverse expos to generate more leads. You mentioned that you are selling into the healthcare industry primarily, and obviously you guys are growing, so you're finding ways to connect with your buyers in that industry. So for our audience that doesn't know, tell us a little bit about a reverse expo, what you guys have seen, and what those events are typically all about.
Yeah, so the typical conference setup, I'm sure that most people are used to, is as a vendor, you have to go to a conference and set up a booth and stand there all day and hope that the buyers come by and you can attract enough of their interest to have a conversation. Mm-hmm. So there's some really cool events out there called reverse expos where the buyers are actually sitting at a booth and you have the opportunity to walk around for a few hours and approach them and give them a 5-minute elevator speech on your business and how it might be a good fit for them. So they're really locked into, talking to you, and you really have a certain amount of set opportunities at each expo to have conversations with your buyers.
Mm-hmm. And you guys kind of happened upon, this in your area by, a conference coordinator or someone reaching out to you guys about a year and a half ago, right?
Yeah, they reached out to us with a marketing email and a marketing phone call. We were a little bit skeptical because it was a new model. We hadn't really gotten into the conference space because it was a pretty big investment for a small company like us. And it just didn't seem like there was the ROI on getting enough conversations out of a traditional conference. So we decided to give one a try down in Miami, and it went really well. So we kind of shifted our whole sales and marketing process to really focus around these events.
Mm-hmm. Nice. And in that, as we were talking offline, Josh, you mentioned, you guys have learned some lessons in how to really take advantage of these, since the first one that you kind of tested the waters a little bit to see if this was going to be a good business development strategy for your team. You guys learned some lessons specifically in preparation, not just showing up to these events, but going through some steps to prepare for the event. So what are some of the things that you guys do when you're sending your team to these reverse expos to make sure that it's going to be valuable for your team?
Yeah, so after the first event, we kind of went to on a whim. We came back with a lot of ideas on how to properly prepare for our next expo. So, one of the big things that we like to do is research the attendees that are going, both on the hospital facility and the actual attendee. So, we have a marketing analyst that does a lot of preparation for each conference, probably starting about 2 months in advance when the attendee list starts becoming pretty firm. So what he does is he goes through and researches the facilities that are going and checks their news stories or on LinkedIn or on our data sources to see if there's any triggers that relate to projects that we're experienced in. So are they merging with another hospital? Are they thinking about buying a new ERP system so that when our staff goes up to have that conversation, they can specifically talk about a trigger that's going on in their organization and start from there.
Mm-hmm. I think that's probably pretty powerful, right? Because, these buyers are standing there prepared to get multiple elevator pitches. Like that's the framework that this event is set up in. And if your salespeople are coming up and not just giving kind of a blanket elevator pitch, especially in this environment where the buyer's getting one after another, they're asking some good questions and then kind of tailoring their message around it. I imagine, that's been a big part of where you guys have seen more success and started to attend more of these and kind of invest in this route. Some of the other things you mentioned kind of on that same research point, Josh, you had one of your salespeople who started to do some specific research consistently around the buyers he was going to go talk with. Tell us a little bit about the strategy and what successes he's seen there.
Yeah, so we have a sales rep that lives in SEC football country. So he likes to open a lot of his conversations by talking about SEC football or basketball or any sort of college sports to more connect on a personal level before he tries to connect on a business level. So a lot of the research that he does ahead of time is what college did these people go to? What are some of their interests or hobbies so that he can open that conversation with a more personal touch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And finding, I see a lot of people, checked out LinkedIn profile and maybe try and make a vague connection of, oh, my uncle went to that school or something like that. That doesn't seem to be very effective. But in SEC country, college sports are very much near and dear to a lot of people's hearts. So I think that strategy in that scenario probably makes a lot of sense. The next thing you wanted to share, Josh, was the performance you guys have seen, what sort of results you guys have seen at the event or certain things that you guys have done while you're there to get better results. Tell us a little bit about, when you send your team to the event, what's going on, what things are they doing, what sort of results are they getting?
Yeah, so one of the important things that crosses over from preparation to performance is we actually create packages for each of our sales reps, either on paper, digital format, that has an outline of each hospital facility that's there, what their triggers might be, statistics about the hospital. So we meet typically a day or two ahead of time and go through that booklet and kind of talk about how we're going to approach each facility or approach each trigger. It's really important to understand how to talk about each specific trigger and turn that into a conversation about how Finix can help them. One of the issues that we've had in the past, recently, we tried to go to an all digital research book, and the day of the show, we couldn't get connected to the Wi-Fi, and there were some significant issues, and it caused a little bit of a panic to try and get started on the expo because the technology wasn't working. So one of the big lessons that we learned in that is let each sales rep determine what kind of technology they want to use, what kind of research they want to use. Like I mentioned, the the SEC football research. If that's important to him and he wants to take that route, then we need to give him that information so that he can execute when he's at the Expo.
Right. You don't want to send all your team out and say, hey, this is our strategy. Go talk SEC football. And you have a bunch of sales reps that don't care about football trying to fake it and make connections with prospects, right?
Yeah. And I think some of the other key points around the execution while you're at the Expo, we like to schedule a halftime break. These are typically 2 to 4 hour sessions. We like to set a meeting place and a meeting time just for 5 minutes where we can all get together and just do a quick discussion of what's working, what's not. How has the market changed in the last 6 months? Are there certain projects that seem to be a hot topic that people are responding to? So that helps us pivot within the conference and make sure that we're hitting the key points.
Yeah, I think that's a great strategy, especially as, you kind of spread out these events and you're planning going into them. You have an idea and a strategy, but there's a good bit of time between when you start doing that research several months out and when you're actually there. So I think that probably has led to a lot of great results for you guys as you as you mentioned, pivot and tweak your strategy, the day of the conference. I love it. The last thing you mentioned that has been really key for you guys in taking advantage of these events and these reverse expos, Josh, was the follow-up. Tell us a little bit about what you guys do there to make these effective.
Yeah, so while we're speaking with these prospects or after we speak with one and we're waiting in line to approach the next prospect, we take notes within our booklets or on our tablets or wherever we can take notes and just really, what was important from that conversation? What were they interested in? So that when we go back in the next 48 to 72 hours and reach back out to these prospects, we want to hit it on exactly what we talked about during that conversation. We don't want to send out a generic email that says, thanks for talking, it was great to meet you. We want to really jump right into the conversation that we were having. So taking good notes and immediately following up with the prospects is very important. They talk to dozens of other companies within the healthcare space. They might talk to a few consultants like us, but they're also talking to hip implant vendors and sterile processing vendors. So there's a lot that happened on their side that they may not remember who we are, and they may not feel like the conversation that we had was as valuable as we felt that it was. So following up with some customized messaging around exactly what we talked about is very important for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, that could be the double-edged sword of these sorts of events, right? You get access to these buyers, but they're also giving access to a lot of other vendors at the same time. So, how much are they walking away and keeping? So I think that follow-up strategy has got to be really key. Anything you guys have done in, varying up or kind of staggering that communication, or maybe connecting on LinkedIn versus following up with an email, or pairing those, or anything you guys have done from a multiple channel communications to follow up with those buyers from these events that you guys have found particularly effective, Josh?
Yeah, immediately following the event, we typically follow up with an email, like I mentioned, specific to the conversation, reach out to them via phone and try and continue that conversation on the phone, connecting with them on LinkedIn, connecting with others in their organization that we met with at the event. Typically, you might talk to 2 or 3 people from the same organization. So really getting them all together and on the same page is really important.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Well, Josh, we really appreciate you coming on the show today. If people want to reach out to you, follow what you and the team at Finix are doing, what's the best way for them to go about doing that?
Yeah, so if they want to reach out to Finix and understand a little bit more about what we do, our website is usefinix.com. That's Finix. You can also find me on LinkedIn. And anybody that wants to reach out to me via email and talk a little bit more about reverse expos or the sales strategy, I'd be more than happy to have a conversation. My email is josh.fuhr@usefinix.com.
All right. Well, Josh, we really appreciate it. We'll have a link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes as well for anyone that wants to connect with you. A lot of great sales conversations these days happening on LinkedIn. So highly suggest folks connect with you over there. Thanks so much for being on the show, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And good luck to anybody going down the Reverse Expo route.
All right.
There are lots of ways to build a community, and we've chosen to build the B2B growth community through this podcast. But because of the way podcasts work, it's really hard to engage with our listeners. And without engagement, it's tough to build a great community. So here's what we've decided to do. We're organizing small dinners across the country with our listeners and guests. No sales pitches, no agenda, just great conversations with like-minded people. We'll talk business, we'll talk family, we'll talk goals and dreams. We'll build friendships. So if you'd like to be a part of a B2B growth dinner in a city near you, go to b2bgrowthdinners.com. That's b2bgrowthdinners.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.